The wolf hasn't entered my life as it enters life of the majority of children, with a gaping mouth armed with fangs, ready to devour me. When I was a little girl, I dreamed of seeing this magnificent animal who frightened grown-ups so much. The wolf fascinated me. It was a thrill every time I heard its name. I wanted to know this unloved one, see it, have a contact with it. These feelings are difficult to express as a child. So I drew wolves using my dog as a model. For me, the boreal forest was a school where my vocation as a naturalist and ethologist was reinforced. For example, I played being a wolf, a lynx, an osprey, or a beaver, imitating the gestures of species I had seen, and imagining the behavior of those I hadn't yet seen. All this came from my deep desire to see the world from the point of view of an animal. It was a very important step because subconsciously I was developing the empathy and sensitivity necessary to put myself in the skin of animals so that I could later study them and get in touch with them respectfully. My dream of observing the gray wolf quickly collided with harsh reality. From a very young age, I understood that something was wrong with our ecosystems. Few species had such a bad reputation as the wolf. In North America, it was accused of destroying big game populations, and I knew that was wrong because predators have lived in harmony with their prey for thousands of years. The truth is that already at that time, governments wanted hunters to have no competitors. Their calculation was simplistic and deceptive. Fewer wolves meant more big game for humans. It's in the name of nature preservation that the wolf was, and continues to be, poisoned, trapped, and shot. In the last century, it was exterminated from almost all American states and from several provinces and regions of Canada, including the Gaspé Peninsula. To observe the wolf in the wild, one had to go far, very, very far, where human madness had not wreaked havoc yet. Life sometimes offers strange paths. For my parents and I, who dreamed of observing the wolf, it was a long detour of more than 15 years through the Gaspé Peninsula, a land without wolves. I was 20 years old when we began to study and film moose behavior in Gaspésie National Park in the early 1980s. In 1993, the broadcasting of our first professional documentary has made our work well-renowned. The public, and probably moose themselves, were surprised to discover how boldly I stepped into the skin of the kings of our forests to make myself understood by them, using their vocal and gestural codes, especially during the rut. In the Company of Moose was produced in collaboration with CBC Television for David Suzuki's popular show The Nature of Things, then broadcasted around the world. It was a scientific and media recognition for us. My name has become closely associated with the moose. Obviously, we became very attached to Gaspésie National Park. We thought we could continue our study on moose there and undertake new ones on species such as the black bear and especially the eastern coyote, which had colonized the territory once occupied by the wolf. We were shocked when the ministry responsible for wildlife decided to kill them inside the park in the 1990s, under the pretext of saving the last caribou herd of the Sheet-Chalk Mountains. Because the gray wolf was absent, the coyote and the black bear became the perfect scapegoats to divert attention from the root cause of the decline of the mountain caribou, logging and other degradations of the species' critical habitat. Reynold, Monique and I have become brutally aware that we couldn't consider continuing our quest in the Gaspé. We were at a dead end. So where to go? National parks are generally protected areas, but mass tourism is not compatible with the kinds of wildlife studies we do. We needed to isolate ourselves in the wild world in order to study animals having had little or no contact with humans. That was quite discouraging because in Quebec it was everywhere hunting and trapping, killing of those we loved. Did it exist somewhere, this land of all possibilities that we dreamed of? This country where the wolf is free and wild? At that time, my parents and I were considered pioneers because we were interested in moose without hunting them. We were also interested in predators without being trappers. The three of us were going against the tide, in search of new horizons concerning the relationship between modern humans and wildlife. Other people had started this evolution by giving up traditional exploitation of wildlife. Our encounter with one of them has changed our destiny.
I no longer went hunting. I no longer trapped. I had stopped all these things. There was something inside me. I was wondering how to look at the forest in a different way. And I say the word forest because I have no other words to describe it. The forest is life. And often it's misunderstood. So how to give a voice to the forest? How to give a different perspective in the community? How to build relationships in different ways? A friend of mine had seen Gisèle's documentary and told me about it. So once more I had the chance to see In the Company of Moose.
The success of In the Company of Moose has had unintended consequences, and I think that is ironic because it gives considerable visibility for the Gaspésie National Park and for the Gaspé Peninsula itself. So after the pan-Canadian broadcast of the documentary, many offers from across the country began to reach us. Communities also wanted to benefit from the positive impacts that could result from works on wildlife that we could do in their region. The documentaries, paintings, books. It was amazing. People were mobilizing to organize a grand seduction of the Benoit trio.
By bringing together the members of the hunting and fishing club, the citizens of the community, teachers and people from the ministry, we formed a small committee. Then everyone got involved. Everyone was committed. I wanted Gisèle, Monique and Reynold to have the opportunity above all to meet children in schools.
If I remember correctly, it was in 1994. Paul was working for the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources. He had been commissioned to study with us the possibility of organizing conferences, talks, and an exhibition of our paintings in Hearst.
My first contact with the Benoits was when I phoned Gisèle. I told her about the project to come to our community in Northern Ontario to talk about moose. It would be a kind of follow-up to the documentary In the Company of Moose.
Hey, it is far from the Gaspé, Northern Ontario. Even if all travel and accommodation costs were assumed by the community of Hearst, a week of activities about our work represented a lot of organization for us.
When you want to ask someone to come, it has to be interesting for them also. These things are not only about money. Hearst was called the Moose Capital in those days, and still today. So I saw great potential here for the Benoits. First, to know the community and meet people. The second step would be to invite them to study wildlife in the area.
Paul aroused our curiosity by telling us about the Chapleau Crown Game Preserve, a territory protected from hunting and trapping since 1925. He affirmed that the Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources was ready to grant us an extended residence permit in the wildlife sanctuary, including permission to build a base camp and reside for several years.
I knew the area very well because I lived there a large part of my life. The Chapleau region was home to an incredibly rich biodiversity. It is also very isolated. There were opportunities to see lynx, wolves, several species of birds. Wildlife was extremely rich and abundant. Even though there was logging, it was not that bad in those days. It was a reserve, so it was extremely large.
A territory of 7,000 square kilometers accessible in part by forest roads, no tourism development, no predator control. There was a little inner voice that said, "Hey, the Benoits, answer this call of fate." A few years later, thanks to our friend Paul, we began a new life in Northern Ontario. A hermit's life entirely devoted to the study of wildlife. Our best years. From now on, we lived like Grey Owl, settled in a log camp near a lake. And the wolves were there. We had found a land where everything was still possible. The land of wolves, free and wild. This wildlife preserve was almost as large as the famous Yellowstone National Park. At the time, one could venture into the hinterland without seeing too many traces of the human passage. During the time we lived there, most animals had never seen humans. They had not had any bad experience associated with hunting, nor familiarization attributable to mass tourism, as often happens in national parks. The seclusion had more advantages than disadvantages because we were practically alone, surrounded with an abundant and undisturbed wildlife governed only by the laws of nature. A paradise. Apart from us, hardly anyone was coming to the remote areas of the reserve. In one day, we could easily see several moose, black bears, a few Canada lynx, red foxes, and sometimes two species together. It was abundance, the original balance as we had never seen it before, and as we never saw it again afterwards. We managed to film the natural behavior of animals because many were neither frightened nor attracted to us. They were simply indifferent to our presence. Often, we didn't have enough of 3 cameras to film everything. The gray wolf remained the most difficult animal to observe. With patience, a lot of patience, we have succeeded in studying 2 packs over a long period, the Burnt Hills pack and the Manadas pack. This is their story, ours and that of the other wild animals of this extraordinary region that the web series Ma'aingin in the Land of the Wolf tells. For me, nothing is more powerful and more evocative than the song of the wolf. As a Metis, our friend Paul knows traditional native songs about the wolf. When the time came to produce the web series, we asked him to perform one. Since it was a matter of oral transmission, the copyright issue was problematic. Paul surprised us by composing an original song in the pure Anishinaabe tradition. This wolf song in the Ojibway language has become the musical theme of the series. When Paul performs it, with or without a drum, it is as if we could hear a whole people singing about their friendship with the wolf.
The song says that I thank the Creator for bringing the wolf. Gikuna means that I honor the wolf. I hold it in high regard. Witina means I walk with the wolf.
Walking with the wolf to discover and observe wildlife. A unique experience that I invite you to share with me, thanks to the web series Ma'aingin in the Land of the Wolf.
Mahingan, hey ha, hey ha, hey